is Samantha Ferrer, and I am the editor-in-chief at Anime Herald and a bit of a Sakura Wars fangirl. So today I'd like to welcome you to my Otakon Online panel, Psychic Song Girls and Super Robots, a Sakura Wars retrospective. This is a special light version of the panel that's made especially for Otakon Online, so I really hope you enjoy it. I am incredibly bad on camera, so I am going to be switching right to the presentation. There we go. Alright, anyway, once again, welcome to my panel, Psychic Song Girls and Super Robots, a Sakura Wars retrospective. This is a special light edition that was put together especially for Otakon Online. And if you enjoy it, please feel free to tweet out with the hashtag SakuraOtakon. I'll be monitoring through this over the course of the panel, and I am more than happy to geek out about Sakura Wars about anything. But before I begin, just for the sake of our time limit, this is a lean, mean version of a 90-minute panel. So we're going to be touching on the essentials for the most part. A brief introduction, the series history, the mainline games, a brief primer on the stage show, and we'll touch on the currently licensed anime, plus the first OVA, because we really should, because you've got to start somewhere. So with that in mind, let's get started with a brief introduction. So what is Sakura Wars? I mean, on paper, this can be described as a media franchise from Sega and Red Entertainment, set in a steampunk version of the Imperial Capital. I mean, you can read the thing here. Basically, this is Psychic Song Girls, Super Robots, in a steampunk world fighting demons. That's pretty much all you need to know. It's very theatrical, heavily inspired by all women theatrical groups like the Shochiku Review, the Sakurazuka Review, and it's structured a lot like an anime franchise. As an aside, we'll get to this later, but series creator Oji Hiroi actually said that he wanted the series to play like you were playing an anime series, which we'll play into things a bit later. Anyway, the series all revolves around this steampunk world where the demonic coma present a constant lingering threat to mankind, and warriors of justice work under a veil of secrecy as the government-backed Imperial Combat Review, or Teikoku Kagekidan, or Teigeki for short. A group of spiritually powered young women who are able to pilot special robots known as Kobu, which are just hulking steampunk monstrosities that are just really freaking cool. But honestly, it's a pretty huge franchise. Since its debut in September 1996, Sakura Wars has spawned 6 mainline games, 15 spin-offs, numerous mobile games, 6 anime OVAs, 9 manga and light novels, a 26-episode TV series by Madhouse, and a 13-episode TV series by Sans Again, which just finished airing, a feature film by Production IG, and 16 high-profile stage shows. I mean, we're talking huge at this point. It was a minor cultural phenomenon for a while. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble a bit, so let's get right into the games. And I'll ask again, what is a Sakura Wars? What makes this series tick? I mean, on paper, it's billed as a dramatic adventure, quote-unquote, which doesn't give too much to work with. In plain English, the games are a blend of visual novels and traditional video games, which are, be it like strategy, action, and there are some role-playing elements on the side. Broken down a bit more, each game is structured like an anime TV series. Every game is presented as a single season, on a spiritual level, with each entry broken into several episodes, and each episode is broken into numerous parts, which are separated by actual eye catches. So it usually bounces from an adventure mode, which is like your traditional RPG segment. I'll get into this in a minute, and the battle mode. The adventure mode makes up about 70% of your game experience. You explore the world, you meet interesting people, you converse with the various team members, you do your bromide hunt and mini games, you bond with your team, you advance the plot. This is like the meat and potatoes of the franchise. And this is really brought to life by the LIP system, which is short for Live Interactive Picture System. this was actually pioneered by the franchise as a way to engage players in the stories a bit more, give a bit more of urgency, a bit more control. So typically, the most common version, as you can see in this image here, is a timed interaction that includes dialogue choices, various world interactions, and things like of that nature. But there are numerous types of lips, including an analog lips, where the intensity of your answer is measured by your analog input, action lips, which is basically QTE, click lips, which is used to basically do close observations or deep conversations with specific characters, and so on. But when push comes to shove, you have to get in a robot. I mean, we're not going to be doing any Shinji Ikari antics. You are getting in that robot. And you will be fighting demons to protect Tokyo, Paris, or New York, wherever it's set. Historically, battles are handled as a strategy-based affair. The first two games were actually grid-based strategy games that played a lot like a very light version of Front Mission, before Sakura Wars 3 moved to the ARMS system, which you can see in this picture here, where you had a bit more control of your over your units, you could move them freely, and it was a bit more interactive. Actually, a lot of the elements of the ARMS system were enhanced upon and repurposed to eventually be used in the Valkyria Chronicles series. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Nowadays, we're talking about hack and slash. The latest Sakura Wars game swapped those strategy-based battles for fast-paced actions, which actually brings the game closer to its original goal of playing like an anime, which is kind of an interesting evolution. So now we have the basics out of the way. Let me go into a brief history of this series. Sakura Wars is the brainchild of Oji Hiroi. The name may not be overly familiar in North America, but in Japan, he is the creator of the well-loved Far East of Eden role-playing game franchise, as well as he has hand in works like, say, Moyo Ken, Version Fleet. Yeah, that Version Fleet. We don't talk about that one. And a few others. I know he had like an exec producer credit on Thousand Arms, which Atlas released in the late 90s or early 2000s. But anyway, he initially came up with the idea for Sakura Wars in 1990. He was watching a production of Shanghai Rhapsody, and he actually wanted to make a video game, or a game in general, that would capture the essence of the musical stage like that. So he actually wrote a treatment for the project, which drew heavily from those stage shows. Contrary to popular belief, this was not a video game concept. It was actually a tabletop concept called Sakura. He made two iterations, Sakura and Sakura 2, which he shot to various publishers, but it was ultimately shot down, and the idea was shelved. Instead, Hiroi would just keep that in the back of his mind to work on Tengai Makyo 2 Majimaru, which would be released 2 years later in 1992. The idea for Sakura Wars wouldn't come back until 1993, actually, when Hiroi was working on the Tengai Makyo Ziria Oboro Hen OVA with a young composer named Kohei Tanaka. In an interview with, I believe it was the Sakura Wars Zenyan novel, but by Media Factory, Hiroi remarks that he was so moved by Tanaka's work that he wanted to make a musical that revolved around these compositions. However, Fate would have different plans. A year later, Hiroi was actually contacted by Sega Vice President Shoichiro Irimajiri, who wanted to have Hiroi Studio, Red Company at the time, later Red Entertainment, but anyway, make a game for the Sega Saturn that would have a quote-unquote popular mascot character. And initially, Hiroi didn't want to do this. It took some time, some consideration, before he would actually finally accept and say, yes, we'll do that. We'll do the project. And to kind of get a groundwork, he actually invited Irimajiri, as well as numerous persons of note to Saipan for a 2-week vacation, a 2-week getaway. And out of the 2-week period, Hiroi pitched Sakura to Irimajiri, which would eventually be picked up. Over the 2 weeks, they hashed out the basic groundwork, and from there, the development team went straight into it. It was going to be an adventure game with strategy-based battles set in a steampunk version of Taisho era, where the Great Kanto earthquake didn't exactly happen. So Japan would be able to just continue on its course, innovating over the line that it was actually following at that point. It was a co-production between Red and Sega R&D 2, which attracted an all-star staff, including original character designer Kosuke Fukushima, creator of Oh My Goddess, and You're Under Arrest, in-game character designer of Hinori Matsubara, who worked with Fukushima on pretty much most of his anime adaptations, actually. Scripts by Satoru Akahori, who did, oh my god, you can throw a rock in the 1990s, you'll hit a work by him, whether it was Sorcerer Hunters, Maze, Saber Marionette J. I mean, you can just throw a rock and you're probably going to find something that he touched at that point. And, of course, music by Kohei Tanaka. The first game, Sakura Wars, made its way to retailers in September 1996, and it became an instant darling both among fans and press, earning high praise from the magazines and selling through more than 200,000 units in its opening week. I mean, it quickly became one of the best-selling games on the Sega Saturn. And from there, it actually basically sparked the immediate development of the sequel, Sakura Wars 2, Thou Shalt Not Die, which launched on the Saturn 2 years later on April 4th, 1998. Now, Sakura Wars 2 wasn't... If Sakura Wars 1 was a phenomenon, Sakura Wars 2 was a monster. I mean, this game sold through more than 350,000 units week 1. It would sell more than 509,000 units in Japan alone, becoming the 5th best-selling entry in the series, and the best-selling Sakura Wars game ever to date. Nothing has beaten it so far. 2 years later, Sega announced what would be known as the Sakura 2000 project, or Sakura Project 2000, depending on how you read the thing. But anyway, this was a major push for the franchise, which aimed to basically usher in a new millennium for pretty much everyone involved, from Red to Sega to the fans. And this was a sweeping attempt to bring everything together. The announced project as part of it included Dreamcast ports of Sakura Wars 1 and 2, Sakura Wars 3, a 3-part drama CD series, a Sakura Wars anime TV series by Madhouse, Sakura Wars the movie, and a bunch of other initiatives that I really just don't have the time to kind of go into today. But in short, they put a lot of stock, a lot of comments into Sakura Wars at that point. Speaking of Sakura Wars 3, Sakura Wars 3 was actually beginning planning during the development cycle of Sakura Wars 2. This would be a production by Overworks, which would bring some big changes to the franchise by expanding the scope out quite a bit, away from its theater-centric design to allow Ogami, the lead character, to explore pretty much Paris in general. It introduced a brand new arms battle system, and on top of that, it was the first game to not star the Imperial Combat Review. It actually introduced an all-new cast from the Paris Combat Review, which was based out of a cabaret called Les Chasmoises, the Black Cats. And this game would actually go on to sell quite well. Not quite the levels of Sakura Wars 2, but it's definitely highly regarded. It received a PS2 port a few years later and continues to be a fan favorite and a critical darling all the same. And in 2002, this was kind of an interesting release. In 2002, Sega released Sakura Wars 4. Now, this was a game that was given a very short development cycle, 10 months. And as such, it's a much shorter game with just 3 acts instead of multiple episodes. And it's fairly significant because this was originally not supposed to be Sakura Wars 4. The original pitch for Sakura Wars 4 would see Ogami travel to New York to lead up a new generation of the comic reviews as a direct follow-up to the movie. Work on the set began shortly after the Dreamcast was announced to be discontinued in Japan. The team wanted to do this as kind of a swan song for the franchise to close off the original story. The tale of Sakura Shinguji, the tale of Erica Fontaine, the Imperial Comic Review, the Paris Comic Review. This was the end of their story. And it was also the last game to feature Noriyuki Oba working as producer. So this was truly an end of an era. And it's definitely not the most popular of the bunch. It's still sold more than 200,000 copies, but God, that ending will get me every single time. Every single time. But anyway, a few months after Sakura Wars 4 was released, Sega hosted an event at a Tokyo hotel to announce the Sakura Taisen World Project. This entire project was aimed to bring Sakura Wars to a global audience. And 7 games were announced, including a remake of the first game, which we'll get into in just a moment, as well as Sakura Wars 5. As well as a few spin-offs, like, say, Mysterious Paris, things of that nature. Sadly, most of the other titles were not released, including Sakura Wars Mysterious Capital, Sakura Hime Nishiki Emaki, which would have taken things back to the Warring States period, and a game known only as Coma, which would have focused on the original version of the Anti-Coma Squad. Sadly, these games were not released in North America either, but that's another story altogether. Sega released Sakura Wars in Hot Blood on February 27, 2003. This was a ground-up remake of the first game, aimed at growing Sakura Wars' fanbase. This featured brand new anime scenes by Production IG. It completely integrated the Sakura Wars 3 Arms Battle System, added new story chapters, new events. It was basically a bigger, better version of the original. And Sakura Wars 5, So Long My Love, the last game in the mainline entries for quite a long time, was released on July 7th, 2005. It was the first game in the series to not star Ichiro Ogami as a lead. Instead, that fell upon Shinjiro Taiga, the new head of the New York Comic Review, and relative to Ogami, but anyway. And more notably, this is the first game in the series to feature a non-binary main character in the form of Subaru Kujo, who is just awesome. They are amazing. It was originally planned to be 11 chapters. There was originally supposed to be a scenario where the team deals with Cleopatra, but it was cut down due to time constraints. And despite strong reviews, the game sold rather poorly. It was actually the lowest selling entry in the main franchise. However, it was also the one game that was released in North America up to this point. On March 30th, 2010, NIS America released the game as Sakura Wars So Long My Love. And as part of the release process, NIS America commissioned a Wii port as well as a brand new English dub. But anyway, though the game reviewed highly, it was a sales disappointment in the West. In an interview with, I believe it was Silicon Era, the president of NIS America said that the game failed to break even, and the translation process actually took longer than the process to release the original game. So due to the amount of labor involved, it did not make enough to justify further work on the franchise from them. So in short, things could have gotten a lot better. And unfortunately, the series kind of remained dormant for quite a long time after a DS release in 2007. A lot of fans thought the series would be pretty much dead at that point until the series went through an unexpected rebirth in 2019. The game was Sega actually teased the game at Sega Fest 2018 before an official reveal on March 29, 2019. An hour after the initial reveal, the publisher announced that they would be releasing this worldwide for the first time in the franchise history. Sega themselves would be releasing this series under their own banner across the globe. And this was a soft reboot of the series, set in the year 1940, in which the original comic reviews were lost in the Second Great Coma War of 1930. I'm not going to get into plot points. There's a lot of spoilers here that I don't want to go into, so I'm just trying to keep this vague. But anyway, in the years that followed, comic reviews across the globe popped up, and the Imperial Comic Review itself had fallen on hard times and was on the verge of closing. As such, Seijiro Kamiyama, a disgraced Navy captain, was tasked with leading a new generation of the Imperial Comic Review to restore their former glory while protecting the capital at the same time. And the game launched in Japan on December 12th, 2019. It sold through 140,376 copies in its opening week, 166,771 units lifetime. This was actually quite a lot more than Sakura Wars So Long My Love. And it actually pushed franchise So Long My Love's global sales, to clarify. And it pushed franchise sales past 4 million. There was a lot of excitement coming into this. It won the Future Division Award, the 2019 Japan Game Awards, and Sega themselves were actually really hyping this up with a series of live streaming events that they actually just wrapped up about a month ago. We'll kind of talk about that a bit more in a few minutes, but I just want to touch upon the anime first. And I really want to touch base on the very first, the Sakura Wars, the Gorgeous Blooming Cherry Blossoms, or Oka Kenron. This 4-episode OVA was originally released in North America by ADV Films, and it's a prequel to the first game that tells the tale of the Imperial Comic Review's formation. And for a lot of people, this is probably the first exposure they ever had to the franchise, because it was the first Sakura Wars media that was widely available in English, to be honest. There were other OVAs, but I'm just going to be keeping to the stuff that's actually licensed right now. The first notable license entry is Sakura Wars TV, which was a 25-episode TV series that was animated by Madhouse. The series, which aired in 2000, was actually directed by Serial Experiments leading director Ryotaro Nakamura and written by series scribe Satoru Akahori. And it's a very, very loose retelling of the first Sakura Wars game. It's a much darker, much more subdued entry, which kind of pushes it into its own. It's like, say, a storyteller retelling the same story twice at different times in his life. There are different elements, different things that get focused, which really gives it a brand new dynamic. And in 2001, we kind of touched on this before, but Sakura Wars the movie hit Japanese theaters. This was directed by Outlaw Star director Mitsuru Hongo at Production IG. And it was actually released in North America by Pioneer in 2003, later Jenny on. And the license has since been rescued by Funimation. The series was a bridge between Sakura Wars 3 and 4, that introduced Ratchet Altair, the New York Comic Review. This was basically your big sequel tease for Sakura Wars 4. Well, 5 now, but 4 at the time. So this was basically a lot of seeds were set for the future of the franchise in this particular film. And this slide's a little bit out of date, but Sakura Wars the animation began airing in April 2020 and just wrapped up as part of the spring broadcast season. This was animated by Sanjigan, who did the in-game cutscenes for the franchise, and directed by Sword Art Online Alicization director Manabu Ono. Funimation currently holds the rights to this, and it's a direct sequel to the new Sakura Wars game. So please, please, please do not go into this expecting a primer, expecting a groundwork, or expecting to get any idea of what's going on. You will be lost. This game expects you to play that first game, that new game, to know the characters, to know the actual finer plot points. And it really does call back quite often. So anyway, apart from the games, apart from the anime, there were also stage shows where the voice cast actually performed in quite a few of these, actually. I believe I said there were 16 of these. But anyway, the stage shows borrow heavily from all-women troupes like the Takarazuka and Shochiku reviews. And it was actually these shows that played heavily into casting decisions. Oji Hiroi wanted to cast performers who, and I quote, talked as if they were singing. They wanted characters with a lyrical tone of voice. And as a bit of an FYI, the Great Imperial Theater in the franchise is modeled after the Shochiku Review's original theater. Oji Hiroi's aunt was actually a member of the Shochiku Review, so that kind of played heavily into this idea as well. Anyway, these shows, known as Kaio shows, were musical events that saw the main cast acting out adventures like, say, IUNE, The Sea God's Villa, The Crimson Lizard, all original stories that were made with the idea of really building out the world and building out the characters a bit more. And kind of creating that idea of a world within a world. And the shows themselves actually became hits in and of themselves, running through 2007 and eventually reaching the Budokan twice, and they packed the house on both cases. Anyway, the big question now is, what's next for the series? Well, Sakura Wars 2009 launched worldwide on April 28, 2019. This was the first in-house global release for the series, and it was translated by Inbound Games, who are best known for their work on the Yakuza series. But more exciting than that, on May 11th, the Japanese Trademark Office revealed 4 Sakura Wars related filings. Sakura Wars Black, which is just an abbreviation of Sakura Wars Black. Sakura Restoration and Sakura Revolution. We do not know what these are just yet, but there is a lot of buzz among the fan community just because it implies there's just a lot of there's definitely plans for something bigger from the franchise. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this abbreviated trip through the Sakura Wars franchise, and if you have any questions, any concerns, any curiosities, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, or just check out my nearly 100 articles on Anime Herald. I write a lot about this franchise. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to present here. I hope you enjoy the rest of Otakon Online. Have a great day.